So in this video, we're going to discuss how you're going to graph lines by coming up with a series of points. Now, if you were in class Friday before spring break, then you've actually already received these notes, so this may be something that you're familiar with. But if you missed the Friday before spring break, these are essentially the notes that we covered. So the idea here is that we know that points are solutions to linear equations. In other words, they're points that are actually on the lines. So if we can find these solutions or find these points and connect them, then we will create the line that's represented. Also note, it's always a good idea to have at least 3 points, and this way we know we've created the appropriate line if all 3 points are on that line. So let's look at how we're going to do this. So in this example, we're going to try and draw the graph of y equals 2x plus 1. And I've given you 3 different x values that we're going to attempt to find a corresponding y value with. So here we're going to use x equals 0, x equals 2, and x equals 3, and we're going to find a y value that goes with it. So if x equals 0, y equals 2 times 0 plus 1, y equals 0 plus 1, so y equals 1. That's going to be a point on our line where x equals 0 and y equals 1. To find the point that corresponds with x equals 2, y equals 2 times 2 plus 1, so y equals 4 plus 1. In this case, y equals 5. So again, that's going to be another point on our line at 2, 5. For x equals 3, y equals 2 times 3 plus 1. So y equals 6 plus 1, y equals 7. That's a point on our line 3, 7. We can represent these points in a table. So if I was to complete this table, when x equals 0, we would want y to be 1. When x equals 2, y would be 5. And when x equals 3, so I've got positive 3 there, so that should be a positive 3, y would equal 7. So let's connect those 3 points on our coordinate grid and see what the line looks like. We would put a dot for x equals 0, y equals 1. A dot for x equals 2, y equals 5. And a dot when x equals 3, y equals 7. So if you notice those 3 points, you could connect and they form a straight line. In this example, the equation is set up a little bit differently. It's 3x minus 2y equals 6. In cases where the equation's written like this, it's a good idea to choose, let's say, x equals 0 and y equals 0, because those are going to be easy values to calculate. So I'm going to select x equals 0 and find a y that goes with that. 3 times 0 minus 2y equals 6. The reason that I chose x equals 0 is here 3 times 0 is 0. So negative 2y equals 6. We divide by negative 2 and I get y equals negative 3. 0, negative 3 will be a point on our graph. Now we're going to try when y equals 0 to find an x that goes with that. 3x minus 2 times 0 equals 6. Well, negative 2 times 0 would be 0, so I get 3x equals 6. We divide by 3. X equals 2. That's a point on my line, 2, 0. Now I'm going to try to find one other point by selecting either an x or a y value to plug in. Let's choose the point maybe when y would equal 3, because I think that's going to be relatively easy math to do, and you'll see why I'm saying that in a second. But let's say if I picked y equals 3, 3x minus 2 times 3 equals 6. 3x minus 6 equals 6. I know that if I add 6 over, I'm going to get 12. And in this case, x would be 4 when we divide by 3. So what I did is I just visually saw that if I plugged in 3, then when I do this math and I add something over, I'm going to get a number that I can easily divide by 3. So again, that's another point, 4, 3, that's going to be on our graph. So we've got our 3 points. The first one is 0, x is 0, y is negative 3. 2, 0, so x is 2, y is 0, and then 4, 3. And if I connect those 3 points, I get my line. In this example, we're going to draw the graph of y equals 1 over 3x minus 2. And I put an important note on here that when working with fractions, pick numbers that are easily divisible by the denominator. That's going to help when we go to actually compute the values of y. So I'm going to choose here x equals negative 3, x equals 0, and x equals 6. All of those numbers are divisible by 3. So to get a y value here, y equals 1/3 times negative 3 minus 2. Y equals, to multiply fractions, you multiply the numerators and divide by the denominator. 1 times negative 3 is negative 3, divided by 3 would be negative 1 minus 2. So y equals negative 3. So that's a point, negative 3, negative 3. Now I'm going to plug in x equals 0. 0 is always a good option. It's easy to multiply by. Y equals 1 over 3 times 0 minus 2. Y equals 0 minus 2. Y equals negative 2. 0, negative 2 should be a point on my line. X equals 6. We're going to plug that in. Y equals 1 over 3 times 6 minus 2. We multiply the numerator and divide by the denominator. 1 times 6 is 6. Divide by 3. That is 2 minus 2. In this case, we get y equals 0. So there's another point, 6, 0. So let's graph those 3 points now and see what our line looks like. We have a point, negative 3, negative 3. A point, x is 0, y is negative 2. And a point, 6, 0. We connect those 3 points and we get our straight line. We're now going to talk about how you graph a vertical line and what the equation of a vertical line looks like. A vertical line will be in the form x equals a. And so look at our example below. We're saying the graph of the equation x equals 3. So in this case, just the a is 3. But all this is saying is no matter what, x will always be 3. So I can come up with 3 points very quickly because no matter what, x is 3. So 3, negative 1 would be a point on this line. 3, 2 would be a point on this line. 3, 5 would be a point on this line. 3, any number would be a point on the graph x equals 3. If we plot these points, 3, negative 1, 3, 2, 3, 5, what you'll see is we get a vertical line through x equals 3, through the value of 3. A horizontal line will be in the form y equals b. So for our example, y equals negative 2. What this means is for the points, no matter what, the y value will be negative 2. So x could be 1 and y would still be negative 2. X could be 0 and y would still be negative 2. X could be 4 and y would still be negative 2. X can be any number, but the second value, the y value, will always be negative 2. So let's plot those points and see what happens. X equals 1, y is negative 2. X equals 0, y is negative 2. X equals 4, y is negative 2. If you connect those dots, you get a line through negative 2 for y.